Late afternoon, light stretched across the parking lot, turning the faded lines and oil stains into long, soft shadows. Heat still shimmered off Highway 40, but inside the little family restaurant called Roadside-s, the air was cool and smelled like grilled burgers, fryer oil, and coffee that had been fresh 10 minutes ago. It was the kind of place where nothing wild ever happened. A toddler banged a spoon on a plastic cup. A teenager scrolled through his phone with one hand and picked at fries with the other. A young couple sat shoulder to shoulder in a booth near the window, sharing a milkshake and whispering like the rest of the world didn't exist. In the corner, Tyler Chen sat with his grandmother. His sneakers didn't touch the floor. His feet swung under the bench, bumping the vinyl. He dipped a fry into a puddle of ketchup, but his attention kept wandering, first to the humming soda fountain, then to the dessert case, then to the big windows that showed the parking lot and the stretch of road beyond. Mrs. Chen watched him with the kind of focused tiredness of someone who had done this 1,000 times. Homework, snacks, making sure he didn't wander off, making sure his curiosity didn't pull him into traffic or trouble. Her hands were folded neatly around a warm coffee mug. The steam curled up toward her face, softening the faint lines around her mouth. For a moment, everything was ordinary. Forks clinked. A plate landed with a muted thud on a nearby table. A server laughed at a small joke. The air conditioner hummed overhead, steady and predictable. Then Tyler heard it first, a low vibration, almost too soft to separate from the background noise. Brushed the glass. He paused, fry halfway to his mouth, and turned toward the window. The sound grew, layering over itself. One engine, then another, then several, all running together into a rumble that carried through the floor and into the metal legs of the tables. Mrs. Chen glanced up, frowning slightly. Outside, 8 motorcycles rolled into view, 2 by 2, sleek and heavy and loud enough now that heads turned in unison. Chrome flashed as they swung into the lot. The riders wore black leather vests and denim, their shoulders broad, their movements practiced and easy, like they had done this 1,000 times before. Pull in, cut engines, drop boots. The entire restaurant shifted. The toddler's spoon went quiet. The young couple by the window turned their faces away from the glass, pretending they hadn't been staring. The hum of voices thinned until only the kitchen noises remained. Oil bubbling, the faint clank of a pan being set down too hard. Tyler pressed his hands to the window, nose almost touching the glass. His eyes widened, pupils bright with reflected sunlight and chrome. He watched the men swing their legs off the bikes, saw the patches on their backs, the elaborate ink on their arms. He caught glimpses of beards, ponytails, dark sunglasses. Tyler, Mrs. Chen said quietly, a warning tucked into his name. He didn't answer. His breath fogged the glass in a faint circle. The door chimed with a soft ding. When the first biker pushed it open, heat rushed in with them, along with the faint smell of exhaust and sun-baked leather. 8 pairs of boots hit the tile, slow and heavy. At their center walked a man a little older than the rest. His hair was black, streaked with silver, pulled back from a face lined by time and road miles. His shoulders were broad, his posture straight but relaxed. His eyes moved first, scanning the room without hurry, taking in exits, corners, faces. The patch on his vest marked him as president of the Desert Riders chapter. His name was Connor Ghost Riley. He didn't have to introduce himself. His presence did it for him. The bikers filled the entrance for a moment, a wall of leather and ink, then stepped aside as the hostess approached. Linda held her menus a little too tight, knuckles pale against the laminated edges. Her smile stayed in place, but it thinned around the corners. "Evening," she said. "Table for 8. Ghost gave her a brief nod. "Coffee," he said. His voice was low, rough, but not unfriendly. "And whatever pie you've got that's fresh. We've been riding a long time." The rest of the men murmured agreement. Linda bobbed her head and turned, leading them through the quiet restaurant. Conversations tried to restart as they passed, came out strained, then died again. Ghost chose the seat with his back to the wall and his face to the door without thinking about it. It was habit now, as automatic as breathing. He slid into place, the leather of the booth creaking under his weight. The others settled around him, filling two large booths near the back. From the corner, Tyler twisted in his seat to keep them in view. Mrs. Chen reached for his sleeve. "Eat," she murmured. "Don't stare." Tyler, he shrugged off her hand without really noticing. His eyes had caught something. When Ghost rolled his sleeves just enough to rest his forearms on the table, a tattoo came into view, ink dark and precise against weathered skin. Flames, chains, and a bird mid-flight, wings spread wide. The phoenix wrapped around his arm, feathers and links woven into a single image. The restaurant didn't know what it meant. Tuladil, his heart thumped once, hard, like it had skipped a step. The fry in his fingers drooped. "Forgotten, Grandma," he whispered, barely moving his lips. "Mom has that bird." Mrs. Chen followed his line of sight just long enough to see the leather, the ink, the size of the men at the back of the room. Her mouth pressed into a thin line. "Enough," she said softly but firmly. "Seat properly." At the biker's table, Linda began placing coffee cups in front of them. The steam curled up into the air, carrying the sharp smell of dark roast. Plates of pie followed, forks clinking against ceramic. Up close, the men said their thank yous, their voices polite, unexpectedly gentle. The room stayed tense anyway. Parents leaned closer to their children. The young couple by the window pretended to look at their phones. Everyone pretended, and no one fooled anyone. Tyler watched Ghost lift his cup. The phoenix on his arm flexed with the motion, the chain links seeming to tighten, the wings pulling against invisible restraint. Something in the 7-year-old clicked into place. Before his grandmother could say another word, he slid off the booth. His sneakers hit the floor with a soft thump. "Tyler," Mrs. Chen hissed, reaching out for him. Her fingers brushed the back of his shirt but missed, closing on empty air as he stepped out of reach. He straightened, adjusted his little t-shirt with both hands, and began walking toward the back of the restaurant, toward 8 bikers and the man with his mother's secret on his skin. Tyler reached the end of the long aisle, just as Ghost set his coffee cup down. The scrape of ceramic against wood made the other bikers lift their heads, sensing a shift before they even saw the boy. A 7-year-old didn't belong in the shadow of 8 leather-clad men. Yet there he was, small shoulders squared, chin tilted up, eyes bright with a courage that wasn't bravado, just innocence untouched by fear. Ghost turned first. He didn't move suddenly, he simply looked, and the space around him tightened. His gaze, sharp, alert, instinctive, dropped to the child, staring up at him with open fascination. For a beat, the entire table stilled. Even the men closest to the wall straightened, reflexes kicking in without thought. Tuller didn't flinch. "Hello, sire," he said, voice steady enough to carry across the hush. "My mom has a tattoo just like yours." The words hit Ghost harder than if someone had slammed a fist on the table. Conversation, what little had flickered, died at once. Forks paused. Drink stopped halfway to lips. The air felt thick, waiting. Ghost's eyes slid down to his own forearm. The phoenix's wings curved with the subtle flecks of muscle beneath skin. Chains inked in dark strokes, wrapping around his wrist. A mark that meant something. A mark that had belonged to only a few. He lifted his gaze slowly. Just like mine, he echoed, voice low but steady. Tyler nodded with the certainty of a kid stating facts. Yes, sire. Even the fire. And the chains, he mimed a looping shape around his own arm. Right here, on her shoulder, a ripple went through the booth. Scar. A broad man with a shaved head and a pale line cutting across his cheek, leaned forward, forearm, tensing on the table. Bear, the younger bearded biker, exchanged a quick glance with Ghost, eyebrows raised in something between disbelief and dawning realization. What's your name? Kid, Scar asked softly, as though a loud voice might break something fragile. Tyler, he answered promptly. Ghost kept his eyes on the boy's face, studying every detail, his expression, his posture, the shape of his cheekbones, the way his dark hair curled slightly at the ends. Small things, quiet echoes. And your mom? Ghost asked, voice still gentle, but carrying something darker beneath it. What's her name? Tyler brightened, eager to be helpful. Lisa, he said. Lisa Chen. But it used to be Lisa Martinez before she married my dad. A pin dropping would have sounded like thunder. Bear blew out a slow, stunned breath. Scar shut his eyes once, as if bracing against a memory. The rest of the men exchanged looks, some sharp, some quiet, all recognizing the same impossible coincidence turning suddenly real. Ghost didn't move for several seconds. Then he shifted just a bit. Just enough to look fully at the child who had unknowingly opened a locked door in the middle of a quiet diner. Lisa Martinez, he repeated, barely above a whisper. Tyler nodded. She works at the hospital. The boy added, she wears scrubs and Crocs. One of the bikers choked back a laugh, but it wasn't unkind, more like his chest couldn't hold the clash of shock and something like warmth. Grandma takes care of me when she's at work, Tyler finished proudly, like he'd solved a puzzle. Ghost exhaled slowly, a breath that felt scraped out of him. He lifted his hand, palm open, and tapped the empty space beside him. You want to sit with us for a minute? Tyler. The invitation settled over the room like a challenge and a promise all at once. From across the diner, Mrs. Chen's chair scraped loudly. She half rose, voice trembling. Tyler, come back here. Now, her hand stretched toward him, fingers disparate. Tyler hesitated for one heartbeat. Ghost raised two fingers slightly in her direction, an unspoken weight. The gesture was simple, not threatening, but carried an authority born of decades on the road. Mrs. Chen froze. Something in Ghost's eyes, something unexpectedly vulnerable, something she didn't have a name for, made her lower her hand a fraction, though fear still tightened her jaw. Tyler made the decision for everyone. He climbed into the booth, small sneakers braced against the seat, legs too short to reach the floor. The leather creaked under his weight. He looked around at the circle of bikers, face open and bright as a porch light. It's really pretty, he said, pointing at Ghost's tattoo. Mom doesn't show hers a lot. She covers it for work. But I saw it when she was getting dressed once. I asked her where she got it. Ghost's throat worked once before he found his voice. And what did she say? She said it's from when she was young. Tyler swung his feet slowly. She said she used to be wild, and she rode motorcycles with friends who were like family. At that word, family, the men around the table shifted, almost imperceptibly. Something old and familiar moved through them, like dust stirred off a long-closed box. Brothers and sisters of the road, Tyler added thoughtfully. That's what she called them. Ghost's fingers curled slightly against the table. The air felt charged, electric. Did she ever, he asked quietly, say anything about someone named Connor? Tyler thought for a moment, squinting. His brows knit together as he searched his memory. I don't think so, he said finally. Grandma doesn't like when she talks about back then. At that, Ghost's expression cracked. just a subtle shift, enough that the others noticed immediately. A flicker, something like pain, and something like recognition. Mrs. Chen took one step forward, ready to end this entire scene, but Ghost spoke first. "Tyler," he said gently, "would it be all right if I asked you a few more questions about your mom?" Tyler nodded, thrilled at being included. Mrs. Chen stopped mid-stride, torn between protecting her grandson and the sudden, strange realization that something deeper was happening, something she didn't understand, something her daughter had never told her. Ghost didn't look at her. He kept his gaze on the boy, on the one piece of Lisa Martinez that had walked right back into his life, uninvited, unexpected, and impossibly real. And the diner held its breath as the past shifted in its seat and began to wake. Ghost didn't speak at first. He simply watched the boy, watched the earnestness in his posture, the unfiltered trust in his eyes, the way his features shifted when he thought hard. And while nothing outwardly dramatic happened, the men around the booth felt it, a quiet click inside their president, the sound of an old lock turning after far too long. Tyler swung his legs, unaware of the tension he had stepped into. "She works at the hospital," he said proudly. "She helps people all day, sometimes all night." Ghost nodded slowly. Every word coming out of this child's mouth tightened something in his chest, something he hadn't realized was still alive. "And you live with your grandmother when she's working?" he asked. Tyler's smile softened. "Grandma picks me up after school. Mom comes home when the sky is dark. She smells like soap and lemon sanitizer." Scar huffed a surprised laugh under his breath. The imagery was so specific, so real. It cut through the heaviness for a moment. Ghost wasn't laughing. He was searching for signs, for truth, for anything that might steady the storm building beneath his ribs. Mrs. Chen took another step closer, her worry sharp around the edges. "That's enough. Tyler," she said firmly, "come back now." But Tyler barely glanced at her. He was too busy studying the phoenix on Ghost's arm. Leaning forward like he was looking at a rare artifact, Ghost lifted his hand again, gentle, but unmistakably asking for a moment longer. Mrs. Chen hesitated, torn between instinct and the unfamiliar softness she saw in the biker president's face. Tyler tapped the tattoo lightly, not touching Ghost, just tracing the air above it. "Mom said, hers reminds her to be strong," he murmured. "She said when she had nothing, that bird helped her stand back up." A silence fell so deep it felt physical. Ghost's jaw tightened. His eyes dropped, just for an instant, as if fighting something sharp behind them. Bear leaned forward, voice hoarse. "Kid! Did she ever tell you the name people used to call her?" Tyler perked up like a light. "Oh, I think she said something funny once. Fire. Something." He wrinkled his nose, digging for the memory. "Firebird. That's it. She said someone used to call her Firebird." Ghost inhaled sharply. Scar's hands closed into fists, knuckles whitening. Bear let out a whisper that sounded like a prayer. Tyler blinked at their reactions, confused but unafraid. Ghost steadied himself, speaking low. "Tyler, do you know why she had to be strong?" The boy shrugged. "She doesn't talk about it much. Grandma says Mom used to make bad choices. But Mom said those years saved her. She said she met people who became her family. Real family. Not just the kind you're born with." Ghost swallowed, a muscle ticking in his jaw. The word family hit harder this time. Then Tyler leaned a little closer, voice dropping like he was sharing a secret. "Mom said she misses them sometimes, the people she used to ride with. She didn't say your names, but she looked sad when she said it." Ghost stared at the boy, really stared, and for the first time since he'd walked into the diner, the hardness in his eyes cracked. "Not broken, just split enough for something else to show through. Grief, memory, pride, and something that might have been regret. Tyler, he said quietly, did your mom ever tell you why she left them? Tyler shook his head. No, she just said she wanted a different life. A safe one. For me, the words struck Ghost with the precision of a blade. He sat back slightly, every line of his body rigid with the weight of truth he hadn't expected to hear from a child. Mrs. Chen stepped forward, unable to wait any longer. That's enough, she said, voice trembling. Despite her effort to sound firm, he doesn't understand what he's saying. Ghost lifted his head, meeting her eyes fully for the first time. He didn't glare. He didn't threaten. He simply looked at her with the kind of quiet gravity that made even the other bikers straighten in their seats. He understands more than you think, Ghost said softly. Mrs. Chen faltered. Tyler glanced between them, picking up on the tension now, frowning slightly. Did I say something wrong? He asked. Ghost shook his head immediately. No, son, not wrong. He hesitated. Not from fear, but from the weight of words he hadn't spoken in 15 years. Just important. Bear tilted his head, murmuring under his breath, Ghost. What are you thinking? Ghost didn't answer him. Not yet. Instead, he turned back to the boy. Tyler, he said gently, there's something I'd like to ask you, and you can tell me no, okay? The boy nodded. Ghost's voice stayed steady, but every man at the table could hear the roughness behind it. Does your mother ever talk about someone named Connor? The air froze. Tula blinked once, twice, then frowned, thoughtful. I don't think so, he said. But Ghost waited, heart pounding once, slow and painful. Tyler's face brightened. She said someone helped her leave. Someone who cared about her, someone who wanted her to be safe. Ghost's fingers curled against the table, not in anger, in something far more complicated. Mrs. Chen opened her mouth, maybe to stop the conversation, maybe to drag Tyler away, but something in Ghost's expression stalled her. Just for a breath, the scarred biker leaned back, letting out a slow, stunned exhale. Hell, he muttered, voice almost reverent. It's really her. Ghost didn't speak for several long seconds. His chest rose, fell. The weight of recognition settled into his features. Inevitable, undeniable. When he finally looked up, his voice was barely audible. Firebird's boy, he murmured. Tula blinked. Who's Firebird? Ghost didn't answer immediately. He just stared at the child. Lisa's child, and felt 15 years collapse into a single moment, heavy with questions, memory, and the echo of a woman who once rode beside him like flame, and the diner held its breath again as the truth began to surface, quiet and unstoppable. Ghost didn't reach for his phone right away. He sat very still, one broad hand resting on the table, the other loosely curled beside his plate. The lines around his eyes softened, not with weakness, but with the sharp, unexpected ache of a man seeing a ghost from his past through a child's face. Tyler leaned forward on his elbows, completely at ease among the 8 men who looked like they belonged on the cover of a cautionary poster. His feet swung under the booth, knocking against the vinyl with soft, rhythmic taps. My mom said she used to ride with her family. Completely at ease among the 8 men who looked like they belonged on the cover of a cautionary poster. Not the family she was born with, the family she found. Scar's eyebrows lifted in a way that meant more than surprise. Bear rubbed a hand over his beard, eyes shining with something close to nostalgia. Ghost's gaze didn't leave the boy. What else did she tell you? That she loved the road, Tyler said promptly, and the wind, and the sound the bike made at night. His face lit up, and he mimicked a low rumbling noise. Tiny hands gripping imaginary handlebars. Bear laughed softly. Sounds like her. All right. Scar nudged him under the table. She used to race half the chapter and win every damn time. Bear muttered. Ghost didn't indulge in the memories. He stayed focused on the present, on the boy who carried the thread of a life he had once been part of. Did she tell you why she stopped riding? He asked. Tyler nodded, though slower this time, as if stepping onto more delicate ground. She said she needed to grow up, he said. For me? He paused, then added in a softer voice. She said she wanted me to have a safe life, a good one. The weight of the words pressed into Ghost's chest. He inhaled once, deeply. Through his nose, Mrs. Chen stepped closer, unable to stay still any longer. That's enough, she said quietly but firmly. He's just a child. Ghost lifted a hand, not to silence her, but to ask for clarity. I'm not hurting him, he said, voice low and calm. I'm trying to understand. Mrs. Chen hesitated. She couldn't explain it, but something in the man's tone, steady, grounded, almost protective, kept her from pulling Tyler away immediately. The boy continued, undeterred. She said she used to have a name, Tyler said, a name only her brothers on the road called her. He squinted, trying to recall it exactly. Fire. Something. Firebird. Ghost whispered. Tyler's face brightened. Yeah, that's it. Firebird. Scare let out a long breath. Bear closed his eyes for a moment, overwhelmed. Ghost rubbed a thumb over the edge of his coffee cup, a gesture small but full of controlled emotion. His voice was steady when he spoke again. Tyler, has your mom ever said anything about someone who helped her leave that life? The boy nodded. She said someone wanted her to be safe. Tyler said, someone who cared about her. Someone who said she deserved something better. Ghost's eyes lowered, lashes shadowing them. The truth cut sharp and clean. The weight of it settled like dust on old memories. Did she say a name? He asked softly. Tyler frowned, thinking hard. No, he admitted, just that he was important. Silence stretched, not empty, heavy, heavy with recognition, regret, and a kind of fierce, quiet pride. Bear leaned close to Ghost. You know what this means. Ghost didn't answer. Not yet. Instead, he reached slowly into his vest pocket. The leather creaked under the movement. Tyler watched his hand emerge with a phone. Black, scratched along the edges, familiar to the men but unremarkable to anyone else. Ghost turned it over in his palm once, thumb brushing the side out of habit. Tyler, he said gently, I'm going to ask you something important. The boy nodded eagerly. Ghost's voice remained calm, though it carried the tremor of something long buried rising to the surface. Would your mom be okay? He asked. If I called her, just to talk, just to make sure she's all right. Mrs. Chen stiffened instantly. I don't think that's appropriate, she said sharply. She left that life behind for a reason. Ghost looked up at her, and something in his eyes, something unexpectedly raw, made her swallow her next words. He didn't argue. He didn't defend himself. He simply placed the phone face down on the table, the screen going dark. I won't force anything, he said softly. It's her choice. Always was. He looked back at Tyler. But if she ever wants to talk, I'd like to hear her voice. The boy considered that, small fingers tugging at the hem of his t-shirt. I think she would, he said quietly. She misses people. I can tell. Scar rubbed a hand over his face. Bear looked away, blinking hard. Ghost didn't move. He simply sat there, shoulders heavy, the tattoo on his arm catching the light, flame and chain and flight all woven into one. Tyler leaned closer, voice barely above a whisper. Are you one of the people she misses? The question struck deeper than anything else that had been said. Ghost opened his mouth to answer, but before he could, Mrs. Chen stepped forward again, though this time more carefully. Her voice held less sharpness, more caution. "That's enough questions for today," she murmured. "Come back now." "Tyler." The boy hesitated. Then he looked at Ghost. "Can I see you again?" Ghost swallowed. "If your mom says yes," he said softly, "I'd like that very much." Tyler slid out of the booth, slow and thoughtful. Mrs. Chen guided him gently toward their table. He turned once more, gave a small wave. Ghost lifted 2 fingers in return. Around him, the bikers sat in silence. No swagger, no bravado, just the quiet understanding that something sacred had just cracked open, something that would not stay buried much longer. Mrs. Chen didn't wait until Tyler fully sat down before turning back toward the bikers' table. Her hands trembled, but her spine was straight, shoulders squared with a kind of rigid, protective fury that came only from years of holding a family together alone. The scrape of her shoes across the floor drew every eye. The restaurant had gone hushed again, not from fear this time, but from anticipation. Something electric lingered under the soft hum of the overhead lights. Ghost rose slightly when she approached, but she lifted a hand sharply. "Don't," she said. "Don't stand up for me." The words were clipped, trembling with emotions she'd spent years suppressing. "I want one thing," she continued, voice tight. "I want you to stay away from my daughter." Scar shifted, bristling. Bear's brows snapped downward, ready to defend their president, but Ghost gave the smallest shake of his head. They quieted instantly. Mrs. Chen pressed on. "You people," her voice cracked. "You nearly ruined her." Her gaze darted to the phoenix tattoo on Ghost's arm, like it was a brand of something poisonous. She came home angry, covered in ink, reckless, and broken. It took years to make her stable again. Years. Ghost didn't flinch. If anything, his expression softened, as if her words were familiar wounds he knew he deserved. "She won't go back," Mrs. Chen said. "I won't let her. And I won't let you show up in her life and pull her away from everything she built." A beat of silence followed, a fragile, painful moment where judgment, fear, and old resentment hung suspended in the air. Then Ghost spoke. His voice was controlled, but not cold, quiet, but not weak. "Ma'am, may I tell you something about your daughter?" Mrs. Chen's jaw tightened. "I know everything I need to know." "No," Ghost said gently, "you really don't." That stopped her, not because of the words, because of the way he said them. Not defensive, not angry, just truthful. Ghost didn't stand or raise his voice. He simply rested both forearms on the table, the flames and chains of the phoenix catching the warm diner lights. "When she rode with us," he said slowly, "your daughter saved 3 lives." Mrs. Chen blinked. "What?" Ghost continued quietly, each memory spoken like a confession. "The night the highway shoulder caught fire, a man crashed his motorcycle. Gasoline everywhere. Flames spreading fast. People froze. He tapped the table once, but she didn't. She ran straight into the heat and dragged him out." Scar exhaled heavily, the memory vivid. Ghost moved on. "There was a brother. Broken, grieving, ready to end everything. She sat with him on a motel curb all night, talking, listening, not letting him slip away." His eyes steadied on Mrs. Chen. "She saved him, too." Bear's voice cracked when he added, "He wouldn't be alive without her." Mrs. Chen stared at them, stunned, the world tilting under her feet. Ghost spoke the final truth, with a softness that held weight like steel. "And when one of our family's little girls needed bone marrow, your daughter didn't hesitate. Signed the papers, went through the pain, gave that child a chance at a life she would have lost otherwise." For a long moment, Mrs. Chen didn't move, didn't blink, She had known her daughter came home wounded, had known she'd returned from that life with anger and scars and silence, but she had never imagined this. Ghost didn't push for sympathy. He didn't try to soften the impact. He just let the truth settle. Lisa wasn't reckless, he said quietly. She was brave, fierce, and she carried more weight than anyone her age should have. But she never lost her heart. Not once. Mrs. Chen's throat worked, but no sound came out. Ghost leaned back, letting her process. I understand why you're protective, he said. You see us and think danger. Shows. Men who pull her into darkness. He gestured gently to his crew, but she wasn't lost when she found us. She was hurting long before that, and she fought to become whole again. Bear nodded. Scar bowed his head. Ghost lowered his voice even further, a tone so honest it cut through every shield she had left. We didn't save her, he said. She saved us. The words hit Mrs. Chen like a quiet blow. Her hand lifted to her mouth, fingers trembling against her lips. Tyler watched her from across the diner, eyes wide with confusion. A server paused mid-stride. Even Linda froze behind the counter. For the first time since she'd approached the table, Mrs. Chen didn't seem angry. She seemed shaken. Ghost reached into his vest, not quickly, not with any theatrics, and pulled out a card. He placed it on the table between them. This is my number, he said. If Lisa never wants to see me again, I'll respect that. If she wants to talk, I'll answer. He slid the card toward her, but didn't push it into her hand. And there's something I'd like you to tell her, he added gently. Tell her! Ghost says, the phoenix rises from the ashes. Mrs. Chen almost dropped the card. Her fingers closed around it slowly, like it carried heat. Ghost nodded once. Respect, not pressure. We'll finish our meal and leave quietly, he said. We're not here to cause trouble. Mrs. Chen swallowed hard, her composure trembling. She opened her mouth as if to speak, but nothing came. Instead, she turned away, gripping the card like a lifeline, and walked slowly back to Tyler, her steps less certain, her expression cracked with a truth she had never expected. At the booth, Tyler frowned up at her. Grandma, what did he say? Mrs. Chen blinked hot, steadying herself before answering. Something I didn't know, she managed softly. Across the restaurant, Ghost watched her go, not triumphant, not relieved, just weighted by 15 years of silence, finally beginning to break. Linda dropped the last receipt into the register, just as the restaurant's atmosphere finally began to ebb back toward normal. The families who had frozen earlier now whispered quietly, stealing glances at the bikers, no longer with fear, but with a strange, unsettled curiosity. Something had shifted in the room, something no one could quite name. At the back booth, Ghost sat with his shoulders slightly bowed, not in defeat, but in a kind of reverent stillness. His brothers said nothing. They just watched him, understanding too well the weight sitting on his chest. On the other side of the restaurant, Mrs. Chen clutched the business card like it was a fragile piece of glass. Her fingers trembled around it, the embossed number pressed into her palm. Tyler leaned against her arm, head tilted in confusion. Grandma, he whispered, are you okay? She didn't answer right away. Not because she didn't hear him, because she couldn't trust her voice. The last thing she expected tonight was to walk into a truth that contradicted 15 years of anger, fear, and silent misunderstanding. Ghost stood then, not abruptly, just with quiet purpose. His brothers rose with him, boots landing softly against the floor. The restaurant hushed again, but it wasn't the hush of dread anymore. It was anticipation. He pulled out his wallet and slid a crisp $100 bill beneath the empty pie plates. It lay there like a final punctuation mark on a moment that had reshaped the air around them. Scar grabbed his jacket from the seat, bare stretched, spine cracking softly, then slung his vest properly across his shoulders. Ghost turned to leave, but he paused at the booth where Mrs. Chen sat, the card still clenched in her hand. Tyler straightened when he saw him approach, eyes lighting up. Ghost offered the boy a warm, brief smile, then he looked at Mrs. Chen, really looked at her, not with resentment, not with the guarded posture of a man used to being misunderstood, but with an openness so unexpectedly gentle that she instinctively tightened her grip on the card. "I meant what I said," Ghost told her quietly. "Lisa's choice matters. Only her choice." Mrs. Chen swallowed hard. She left that life behind." Ghost nodded. "She did, because she wanted something better, and we respected that. It wasn't the answer she'd expected. It softened something in her chest she wasn't ready to name." Ghost hesitated just a moment, the memory crossing his expression like a shadow of sunlight through clouds. "And if she never wants to speak to me again," he added softly, "I'll stay gone." Tyler looked between them, confusion returning. "But," he started. Ghost crouched slightly to meet the boy at eye level. The leather vest creaked softly with the movement. "You're a brave kid, Tyler," he said, "really brave. And your mom?" "She was one of the bravest people I ever knew." Tula beamed, pride bursting across his face so quickly it nearly broke Mrs. Chen's restraint. Ghost rose again, straightening fully. He began to turn away, but stopped one last time. He met Mrs. R. Chen's eyes with an expression full of something she had never expected to see on the face of a man like him. "Gratitude. Please tell her," he said softly. "Ghost says the phoenix rises from the ashes." The words hung between them, heavy, intimate, a key to a locked part of Lisa's past. Mrs. Chen's breath hitched. She didn't know what the phrase meant, but she knew exactly how important it was. Her fingers tightened around the card. Ghost gave her a respectful nod. Then he turned, and he and his brothers walked toward the door. Their boots hit the tile softly, but in unison, a steady procession of weight and memory. The door chimed as they stepped out into the fading sunlight. Outside, the bikes gleamed like polished iron wings, engines waiting in stillness. Ghost swung a leg over his motorcycle, settling into the familiar leather seat. His brothers mounted theirs, turning toward him instinctively. For a moment, Ghost simply sat there, eyeing the restaurant through the glass, chest rising with a deep, steady breath that looked like acceptance and ache in equal measure. Then he revved his engine. The sound rumbled through the restaurant. Not aggressive, not loud, but full, whole. Tyler rushed to the window, palms pressed against the glass. "Bye, Ghost," he shouted. Ghost gave the smallest wave, 2 fingers lifted from the handlebars. Then the engines rose, unified and low, and the bikers rolled out of the lot, fading into the warm glow of evening. Back inside, Mrs. Chen remained frozen in the booth, staring at the card as if afraid it might vanish. The embossed number caught the light, the letters crisp, the edges warm from her grip. Tyler tugged her sleeve. "Grandma." What did he say? She forced herself to breathe. Her voice came quiet, shaken, honest. He said. Her eyes softened, the fear inside them shifting into something more complicated. "He said something I never expected to hear." Her gaze drifted back toward the empty door, where the bike's echo still lingered like the last notes of a song. "And I think," she whispered, "your mother needs to know?" She tucked the card carefully into her purse, this time not like a threat, but like something delicate, something important. Tyler rested his head on her arm, still watching the fading direction of the bikes, and for the first time that night, Mrs. Chen let herself sit with the truth. Lisa hadn't been rescued from the riders. She'd been shaped by them. And maybe, just maybe, Ghost was not the danger she had always believed. The card hummed like a heartbeat against the lining of her purse, a seed planted, waiting. The apartment door clicked shut behind Lisa as she stepped inside, dropping her keys into the ceramic bowl by habit. Her shoulders sagged beneath the weight of a 12-hour hospital shift, scrubs wrinkled, hair escaping her bun, the faint smell of antiseptic clinging to her. She expected Tyler's toys scattered across the living room. She expected her mother humming in the kitchen. She expected normalcy. What she didn't expect was the expression on Mrs. Chen's face. Her mother stood near the table, hands clasped too tightly, eyes wide with something Lisa couldn't decipher: fear, disbelief, and something softer beneath it. The overhead light cast a warm halo around her, but her posture was rigid, as if bracing for impact. Tyler peeked around her hip. "Mom," he whispered. Something happened. Lisa set her purse down, instantly alert. "Did you fall?" she asked, bending slightly to check Tyler's hands and knees. Mrs. Chen shook her head. "No," she said quietly. "You need to sit down." Those 5 words stole the air from Lisa's lungs. She straightened slowly. "What's going on?" Mrs. Chen didn't answer her. Not immediately. Instead, she reached for something on the table, a small, rectangular object resting beside a half-finished cup of tea. She lifted it carefully, as though it were fragile. "Someone came to the restaurant today," she said. Lisa's pulse stuttered. "What do you mean, someone?" Mrs. Chen stepped forward and placed the white business card into her daughter's hand. The embossed lettering hit like a punch to the ribs. "Desert Riders. President, Connor Ghost Riley." Lisa's fingers wrapped around it instinctively, knuckles whitening as her breath left her in a sharp, broken exhale. "He was here," she whispered. Mrs. Chen nodded. Lisa sank into the nearest chair, the card trembling between her fingers. The room seemed to shrink around her. Her mother's voice softened. "Tyler walked up to him," she said. "He recognized the tattoo." Lisa pressed her palm reflexively to her shoulder, feeling the outline of the phoenix beneath her scrub. The old burn of memory surged through her like a spark hitting gasoline. "Ghost was here," she murmured again, barely audible. Mrs. Chen pulled out the chair beside her and sat carefully. He told me things." Her voice wavered. "Things you never shared." Lisa shut her eyes. Shadows from 15 years ago washed over her. Long roads, long nights, engines humming beneath her spine, fireside stories. Ghost's steady voice guiding her through storms she hadn't known how to survive. "What did he say?" she asked, her voice thin. Mrs. Chen hesitated only long enough to steady herself. "He said you saved people," she whispered, "that you risked your life more than once, that you helped a man who had lost everything, that you donated bone marrow to a child." Lisa's breath hitched. Her fingers dug into the edges of the card, grounding herself. "I never wanted you to know," she said, voice breaking. "You hated that part of my life. I didn't want to give you more reasons." Mrs. Chen's expression cracked with something like guilt. "I hated the fear," she corrected softly. "Not you. Never you." Tyler climbed quietly into Lisa's lap, small hands curling into her scrubs. "Mom," he whispered. "Ghost said you were family." The words struck deeper than any memory. Lisa opened her eyes. They glistened. "I was," she said, "a long time ago. And the tattoo," Tyler pointed toward her shoulder. Lisa brushed her fingers over it, feeling the raised ink beneath her palm. "The phoenix," she said softly, "reminds me that I survived things I never thought I could, and that I chose a new life." Mrs. Chen leaned forward, voice barely above a breath. "Why did you leave?" "Lisa, really? Lisa stared down at the card, its edges soft from how tightly she clutched it. She thought of the night Ghost had found her, crying behind the mechanic shop, her hands shaking from exhaustion and fear. She thought of how he had placed his vest around her shoulders and said, "Firebird, you're stronger than this life." "Finally," she answered, "because Ghost told me I deserved more than the road." She whispered, "He said if I stayed, I'd burn myself out before I ever learned who I could be." Her mother blinked, stunned. Lisa continued, voice trembling but sure. "He made me promise to leave, to start over, to build something safe, something stable, something that wasn't about running from pain." She brushed a tear quickly from her cheek, and he was right. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Mrs. Chen exhaled, a deep, slow release of resistance and long-held judgments. "I didn't understand," she said quietly. "I only saw the danger, not the people." Lisa reached for her mother's hand, their fingers laced together softly, naturally, something they hadn't done in years. Tyler tugged her sleeve again. "Mom, are you going to call him?" The question hung in the air. Lisa swallowed, throat tight, eyes falling back to the card in her hand. 15 years. 15 years of silence. 15 years of a promise she'd made to a man who had pushed her toward a life she never would have chosen for herself. She stood slowly, lifting the card into the kitchen light. Ghost's words came back to her, spoken only through her mother. The phoenix rises from the ashes. A code, a memory, a door opening. Lisa wiped her cheeks with the back of her hand and let out a shaking breath. "Yeah," she whispered. "I think I have to." Her voice wasn't fearful. It was full, whole, ready. She moved toward the kitchen, the card held gently between her fingers, Tyler following close, Mrs. Chen watching with a softening heart. And under the warm light of the small apartment, Lisa reached for her phone, finally ready to bridge the life she had run from and the life she had built. The small kitchen was lit only by the soft under-cabinet glow, casting warm light across a half-finished cup of tea and the cool surface of the counter. Lisa stood in that dimness for a long moment, her palms pressed against the edge of the counter as she tried to steady her breathing. The quiet of the apartment wrapped around her, broken only by the hum of the refrigerator and the faint rustle of curtains shifting with a night breeze. Her mother lingered in the doorway, arms folded, eyes filled with a tight mixture of fear, hope, and uncertainty. She did not speak, but her presence filled the room, heavy as weather before a storm. Everyone else in the apartment was asleep. The world had gone still. Lisa held her phone in one hand and the business card in the other. She brushed her thumb over the raised lettering again and again. Desert Riders, President Connor Ghost Riley. The name alone shook loose 1,000 memories she thought she had locked away forever. She inhaled, sharp and trembling. Then she dialed. The phone rang. Once, then twice. The rings seemed too loud in the small kitchen, echoing against the tile and into the hollow place behind her ribs. On the third ring, a voice answered, rough, familiar, steady as the road beneath a motorcycle. "This is Ghost." Lisa closed her eyes. Her heart thudded against her ribs. Her grip on the phone tightened. "The Phoenix remembers," she whispered, voice soft but clear. Even after the ashes blew away, silence rushed in. Not empty silence. Charged, startled silence. The kind that felt like breath caught in a throat. Then Ghost exhaled, a low sound of disbelief and emotion, edging raw. "Firebird," he said, "I thought I would never hear your voice again." Her breath cracked. A laugh, thin and trembling, escaped her. "It is me," she said. "It has been a long time." "Too long," he murmured. "Long enough that I counted the years. That might make me loyal, or foolish, or something in between. Maybe both," she whispered. He laughed quietly, the same soft sound he used to make beside a campfire when the world slept around them. "How are you, Lisa?" he asked. "How has life treated you?" She sank into a chair. The wood creaked softly beneath her, grounding her. "I have been working," she said, "raising a fearless little boy, trying to do the best I can. Some days are good, some days are just surviving." Ghost's voice warmed. "The boy has guts," he said, walked right up to me like I was just another man trying to finish a cup of coffee. "He gets that from my mother," Lisa said with a small smile. "No," Ghost replied gently, "he gets it from you." Her throat tightened. She let the quiet sit between them before speaking again. "What about you? How are the others?" Ghost paused, and she felt the heaviness through the phone. "Some stayed with me," he said. "Some drifted. Some. The road took them." Lisa's chest ached. She bowed her head. "I am sorry. We all knew what we signed up for," Ghost replied. "But you chose something better." She swallowed hard. "I chose a different life," she said. "Not easier, just different." He hesitated, then asked the question that had lived between them for over a decade. "Why did you never reach out?" "Not once." Lisa pressed her fingers to her forehead, closing her eyes. "Because you told me to go," she whispered. "You told me to build a life that would not swallow me alive. You asked me to leave the road before it burned me down." Ghost exhaled a sound of guilt. "I did," he admitted. "I meant it. You deserved more than the life we lived. But I never meant for you to vanish. I was afraid if I looked back," she said, voice breaking, "I would stay, and I could not stay." Ghost. "Not then." Quiet settled again. This time it was full of shared ache rather than distance. Ghost's voice softened to something unexpectedly vulnerable. "I missed you," he said. "Not the rider you were, not Firebird. You." Tears pricked at the corners of her eyes. "I missed you too," she whispered. "More often than I let myself admit." Ghost inhaled slowly. "Lisa, would it be all right if I saw you? Not as the president of anything, not as some symbol of the past, just as a man who once cared for you, and still does." Lisa looked down the hallway toward her son's room. She thought of his face pressed against the diner window, the awe in his eyes. She thought of the woman she had been and the woman she had become. For a moment she was silent. Then her voice came, soft but steady. "Yes," she said, "I would like that." Ghost did not respond right away. When he did, the warmth in his voice was edged with something darker, older. "All right," he murmured. "But Lisa, before we hang up, there is something you should hear." She straightened slightly, sensing the shift. Ghost's tone lowered, weighted with warning. "Your mother tried to protect you from our world, not because she disliked us, because she feared what the road might demand from you again. The world you walked from is still there, Lisa. It remembers you. It remembers who you were." Lisa pressed a hand to her shoulder, feeling the outline of the phoenix beneath her scrubs. The ink seemed to thrum faintly, as though awakening. "And if I step toward that world again?" she asked, quiet but firm. Ghost did not soften his answer. "Then you need to be sure you are ready for everything it carries. The good, the bad, the ghosts we both still live with." Lisa lifted her chin. "I will be ready." There was a pause, a deep, slow breath from Ghost's side of the line. Then, "I will call you tomorrow. Tell me when and where. I will come." "I will," she whispered. The call lingered a moment longer, neither wanting to be the first to let go. Then, softly, "Good night, Firebird. Good night, Ghost." She ended the call. The kitchen fell silent again. Lisa set her phone down gently and pressed her palm to her shoulder. The phoenix beneath her skin felt warm, alive. She exhaled, whispering into the dim light. "All right, let us see what comes next." The late afternoon sun slanted through the living room window when the knock came. It was a low, deliberate sound, 3 steady raps that carried weight without force. Lisa froze in the hallway outside her bedroom, one hand hovering near her hair, the other pressed against the cool wall to steady herself. Her mother peeked from the kitchen, tension tightening her posture. Tyler, mid-Lego construction, looked up sharply. "Mom," he whispered, eyes wide. "Is that him?" Lisa didn't answer. She smoothed the front of her blouse with trembling palm, took one quiet breath, and crossed the room. Her pulse steadied only when she touched the doorknob. Then she opened the door. Ghost stood on the welcome mat, not as the imposing president of a biker chapter, not as the figure from a past life she had tried to bury, but as a man who looked suddenly, achingly human. He wore clean denim, a dark shirt, and his vest, though the patchwork of the desert riders seemed less a warning tonight and more an echo of where he had come from. His shoulders were broad, but not rigid. His expression was open, cautious, and warmer than she remembered. "Evening," he said quietly. Lisa's breath caught, but she managed a small smile. "Hi." For a moment they simply looked at each other. 15 years of distance dissolved into the familiar pull of recognition. Then Tyler barreled past her with no hesitation whatsoever. "Ghost," he shouted. Ghost's expression cracked into something like joy. He crouched down instinctively, arms open, but gentle, allowing the boy to decide how close to come. Tyler closed the gap without hesitation, throwing his arms around Ghost's neck in an embrace that startled the man into stillness for a heartbeat, before he returned it with surprising tenderness. Behind them, Mrs. Chen watched with stiff, quiet caution. Lisa stepped aside. "Come in." Ghost rose, guiding Tyler forward with a hand on his small shoulder. He nodded once to Mrs. Chen. "Ma'am," he said respectfully, "thank you for letting me be here." Mrs. Chen swallowed, then inclined her head slightly. "We will see if it was the right choice." Ghost accepted the warning without flinching. Dinner was ready. Her mother had insisted on cooking despite her nerves. The table was set for 4, the scent of simmering broth, ginger, and soy drifting through the apartment like a warm invitation. They sat, Ghost across from Lisa, Tyler between them, Mrs. Chen watching everything with the quiet vigilance of someone who had spent years keeping her family held together through will alone. At first, conversation was light. Tyler talked excitedly about school and the cookie reward system his teacher used. Ghost listened with the full attention of a man who knew exactly how rare childlike joy could be. But as the food settled into bowls and steam fogged the air, tension coiled under the surface. Ghost placed his chopsticks down gently. "Mrs. Shen," he said, tone respectful but steady, "I know my presence here is not easy for you." She looked up sharply, ready to brace, but Ghost continued before she could react. "I want you to know I did not come here to pull Lisa back into anything. I came because she reached out. And because there are things we never settled. Truths she carried alone." Lisa's breath hitched. She felt her mother's gaze slide toward her, not accusatory this time, concerned, confused. Host met Mrs. Chen's eyes. "You believed our world broke her," he said, "but she came to us already wounded. We gave her a place to breathe, to heal, and when she needed to leave, I made sure she had the chance." Mrs. Chen's face softened a fraction, not acceptance, understanding. Lisa rested her hands in her lap, fingers intertwined. "Mom," she said softly, "I didn't tell you everything because I didn't want you to carry it. You had enough taking care of all of us, and I was afraid if you saw how much I had changed, you would see me as someone you couldn't protect anymore." Mrs. Chen's breath trembled. "I never needed you to be someone I could protect," she said, voice cracking. "I only needed you safe." Ghost spoke quietly. She is safe. She built a life any of us would be proud of. The room stilled. For the first time since Ghost arrived, Mrs. Chen looked at him not with fear, but with something almost like gratitude flickering behind her guarded expression. Dinner continued. Conversation eased. The tightness in the room gradually softened into something tentative but real. When they finished eating, Tyler tugged Ghost toward the living room to show him drawings of motorcycles he had made with determined, if chaotic, enthusiasm. Ghost knelt beside him, offering soft praise in a way that made the boy glow. Lisa leaned against the doorway, watching with a mixture of nostalgia and awe. There was something deeply natural about the scene, something she never expected to feel again. Her mother approached quietly. "You loved him," she murmured, not as accusation but as revelation. Lisa nodded once, eyes still on Ghost and Tyler. "I did," she whispered, "and part of me never stopped." Mrs. Chen considered this, breath unsteady. "Is this going to break your life?" she asked. Lisa swallowed the lump in her throat. "I do not know," she whispered, "but I think, for the first time, I am not afraid to find out." As if sensing he was being talked about, Ghost glanced toward her. Their eyes met, gentle, knowing, full of things neither could yet say aloud. The evening wound down slowly. When it was finally time for Ghost to leave, he stood near the doorway, fest in hand, the same calm presence he had brought into the diner days earlier, missing none of the weight, none of the truth. "Thank you for dinner," he said, "and for trusting me with your home." Mrs. Chen nodded. "Thank you for coming peacefully." He smiled faintly. "That was always the plan." Tyler latched onto his leg in a final hug, which Ghost accepted with a soft rumble of laughter before straightening again. Lisa walked him to the door. They stood close, not touching, but the energy between them hummed like a low engine idle. "I will call you tomorrow," Ghost said softly. "If that is still all right." "It is," she whispered, hesitated, eyes flickering to her shoulder, where the phoenix rested unseen beneath her blouse. "Firebird," he murmured, voice low. "The road remembers you, but it does not own you. Whatever comes next, you choose it." The truth of that settled deep into her chest. "I know," she said. He stepped back, offered her a final nod, and walked down the hallway, his boots echoing against the floor in steady, measured rhythm. Lisa closed the door gently and leaned her forehead against it, exhaling a breath she had been holding for years. Her mother walked up behind her and placed a hand on her shoulder. "What now?" she asked quietly. Lisa lifted her head, eyes steady. "Now," she whispered, "now I figure out what my life looks like when I stop running from who I was." Behind her, the soft hum of the apartment felt less like a hiding place and more like the beginning of something she had thought she lost forever. And for the first time in a long time, Lisa felt whole. Morning arrived slowly, sunlight sliding across the floorboards in soft golden lines. The apartment was quiet, except for the faint hum of the kettle warming on the stove. Lisa sat at the dining table, hands wrapped around a warm mug, eyes unfocused on the small swirl of steam rising into the air. The night before still lingered in her chest. Ghost at her door, Ghost at her table, Ghost kneeling beside her son, as though no years had ever passed. Everything felt both impossibly fragile and strangely inevitable, like the slow shift of seasons or the steady bloom of spring after a long winter. Her mother joined her wordlessly, placing another mug down and folding into the chair beside her. The silence between them was easier now, not brittle or strained, simply full. He was respectful, Mrs. Chen said after a moment. "More than I expected," Lisa nodded. "He always has been." Her mother hesitated, then added, "And he cares for you." That was clear. The words loosened something deep inside her, a knot she had carried for many years, tied tight with fear, pride, and misunderstandings. Before she could answer, a soft knock sounded at the door. Not urgent, not intrusive, just present. Lisa's breath stilled in her throat. "Mrs." Chen looked at her, surprise flickering through her features. Already, Lisa rose slowly, setting her mug down. Her pulse quickened as she crossed the room. She wasn't afraid, not anymore, just aware, keenly aware, of how her life was shifting under her feet. She opened the door. Ghost stood in the hallway again, but he wasn't alone. Bear and Scar lingered a respectful distance behind him, each holding something carefully wrapped in cloth. They looked almost formal, out of place in the soft morning light. Ghost lifted a hand in greeting. "Morning." Lisa blinked, startled. "I wasn't expecting you this early. I thought I owed you something," he said. "Something I should have given you a long time ago." Bear stepped forward first, placing a small bundle in her hands. It was heavier than it looked. The cloth unfurled to reveal a leather vest, the same deep black as memory, the same weight of belonging stitched into every seam. On the back, the phoenix glowed in thread, the color of flame. Her breath caught. "This was yours," Bear said quietly. "We kept it." Scar offered his bundle next, a thin, battered metal tag, worn along the edges from years of road and weather. The inscription was simple, but her name was carved with deliberate care. Firebird. Lisa's fingers trembled as she traced the letters. She had thought these pieces lost forever, swallowed by the past, yet here they were, held out to her not as a chain, but as a relic of identity she no longer had to fear. Ghost stepped closer. "You do not have to take them back," he said. "I came to return what belongs to you, so you can decide what to do with it. No expectations, no pressure, just truth." She swallowed hard. "And what truth is that? That you were never meant to choose one life and forsake the other." Ghost said gently, "You can be Lisa, and you can be Firebird. You always could." Emotion rose hot behind her eyes. She looked down at the vest, at the vibrant wings stitched across the leather, at the years of stories woven into every thread. Slowly, she folded it over her arm. "Thank you," she whispered, "for keeping a part of me safe when I couldn't." Ghost nodded. Slow, reverent. Tyler barreled into the room behind her, still in pajamas, hair a wild tangle. "Ghost," he yelled, "is that Mom's motorcycle jacket?" Ghost laughed softly. "Something like that." Tyler's eyes went huge. "Can she ride again? Can I ride with her? Can I?" Mrs. Chen appeared behind him, placing a steadying hand on his shoulder. "One day," Lisa said with a smile, "but not today." Ghost looked relieved. She wasn't diving recklessly back into the past. She was walking forward with balance. Lisa stepped out onto the landing, her gaze steady. "What happens now?" she asked him. Ghost held her eyes for a long moment. "Now," he said, "you decide the shape of your life, and I will not stand in the way of any piece of it. If you want me in it, I will be here. If not, I will ride on knowing you found the life you deserve." His honesty cut deeper than any declaration could have. Lisa reached up, brushing her fingers lightly against the edge of his vest, not claiming, not clinging, simply acknowledging the space he had chosen to give her. "I want you here," she said softly, "but this time we do it slowly, carefully." Ghost exhaled, something like relief loosening his shoulders. "Slow is good," he murmured. Bear and Scar exchanged a look, a quiet, pleased one, before stepping back to give them privacy. Lisa's mother approached then, her expression unreadable at first, but then she extended her hand to Ghost. "Thank you," she said, voice firm though soft, "for what you did before and for what you are doing now." Ghost shook her hand with the respect of a man who understood the magnitude of her gesture. It is the least I can do. Lisa glanced at the vest again, then at her son, then at Ghost. For the first time in years, the pieces of her life did not feel like rival identities fighting for space. They felt like chapters of the same story finally allowed to meet. Ghost stepped back, preparing to leave. "I will call you later," he said. "Tell me when you want to meet again." Lisa smiled. "I will." He nodded once, simple, certain, and walked down the hall with his brothers. The door closed softly behind him. Lisa stood still for a moment, phoenix vest folded over her arm, morning light warming her shoulders. Her mother rested a hand on her back. "What will you do with it?" she asked. Lisa looked down at the embroidered wings. Firebird, the woman she had been, the woman she could still be. "I will keep it," she said. "Not to wear, just to remember." She turned, looking into her home, her son, her mother, the quiet life she had built from ashes and determination. "And I will move forward," she added softly. Tyler rushed toward her, hugging her waist. "Mom," he said, "you look happy." She smiled and held him close. "I think I am," she whispered. Outside, a motorcycle engine rumbled to life. Steady, low, familiar. Lisa closed her eyes. Not to escape, to breathe. The phoenix rises. And this time, she rises on her own terms. At its heart, this story reminds us that the past is not a prison. It is a teacher. It shows how identities we once carried, the choices we made, in moments of fear or courage, and even the roads we walked away from, do not define our worth. What defines us is what we do with those pieces now. Lisa's journey is a quiet reminder that healing is rarely linear, and reclaiming ourselves often means acknowledging the chapters we tried hardest to forget. Sometimes we break the silence not to relive old wounds, but to understand who we became because of them. Ghost's presence challenges us to look beyond appearances and assumptions, to recognize the dignity and humanity inside people whose stories we may have misjudged. And through the eyes of a child, unfiltered, unafraid, we're shown how compassion can reopen doors, long thought sealed. Life has a way of circling back to what matters. As the old American saying goes, the truth will out. When we face our truth instead of hiding it, we reclaim our voice, our agency, and our right to be whole. Whether you're confronting a painful memory, stepping away from a harmful relationship, or standing up against quiet injustices, remember, you are allowed to evolve. You are allowed to outgrow your past without erasing it. And like the phoenix, you are allowed to rise again and again on your own terms. If this story stirred something in you, feel free to share your thoughts in the comments. Tell us what part resonated, or share a moment in your own life when you found strength in an unexpected place. Hit like if these stories move you, and subscribe so you never miss the next blend of drama, heart, and reflection. Wishing you peace, clarity, and a gentle path forward, wherever the road leads next.